Okay, so we're going to talk about the nose now and how to draw the nose. The first thing you need to know on the nose is where it goes. So your nose, remember when you are mapping out your proportions, you have put a line down the middle of your page. So you have a vertical line going down the middle of your page, and halfway through your oval, you should have a line going down the horizontal part of your page. And that is the line that marks where your eyes start. From there, your nose starts at the edge of one eye, and it's as big as from one edge to the other edge. And it should go down to your second line, which is halfway from your eye line to your chin line. You have where your nose ends. And from here, we'll talk more detail about how to draw your nose. First, let's talk about the anatomy of your nose. So your nose has a bridge. So the part that goes down is the bridge of your nose. Then you have the ball, which is the round part on the edge of your nose. And then you have your nostrils and your wings. It's the part that goes around your nostrils.
Hey, welcome to Proco. Today we're going over the nose. We have noses of all shapes and sizes, but there are things they all have in common. We should understand these similarities so that we can solve any nose from any angle. In the next few minutes, we'll simplify the nose into its major planes to understand the perspective from various angles. Then we will go deeper and explore the anatomy. And finally, based on the anatomy, break up the major planes into minor planes. The major planes. In my portrait drawing classes, I see a lot of people struggling to get the nose pointing in the right direction and to look three-dimensional. To do this correctly, it's important to understand the nose as a simplified box. There are the side planes, the top plane, and the bottom plane. As the head turns to the side or up and down, all the angles and shapes of the nose will change. This could get really complicated, and that's why it's so important to first solve the perspective of the box, and then add the anatomy. So let's see what happens to the major planes as the head moves. From the front view, the tip of the nose is aligned with the center line of the face, and the side planes are the same width. As the head turns to the side, the tip of the nose will extend away from the center line. Because of foreshortening, the far side plane will get thinner, and the closer one will get thicker. At about 3/4 view, the further side plane is hidden, and eventually at side view, even the top and bottom planes are hidden. Now let's see what happens when the head tilts up or down. Pay attention to the heights of the top and bottom planes. From straight on, you'll generally see a little bit of the bottom plane. As the head looks up, the bottom plane gets taller, and the tip of the nose will get closer to the eyes. Eventually, it will even cover a portion of the eye. The tendency for many artists is to lower the tip of the nose. But if you do that, then the nose will point in a different direction than the rest of the face. That's just weird. At a down tilt, the top of the nose will extend down from the nostrils. Remember that the bottom of the middle third indicates the connection of the nostrils to the face, not the tip of the nose. The anatomy. Once you establish the perspective of the nose, it's time to add some details. But if you don't understand the anatomy, it's hard to know what details to put in. Understanding the anatomy helps you to design your shapes to indicate the subtleties of the nose. The nose is made up of interlocking pieces of cartilage and fat attached to the bone of the skull. Let's group these pieces into 3 groups: the bridge, the ball, and the wings. The bridge. The top half of the bridge is the nasal bone, and the lower half is the lateral cartilage. The side plane is a bone called the maxilla, and at the top, the nasal bone connects to the forehead at the glabella, which is a keystone-shaped plane that faces downward. The edge of the nasal bone and lateral cartilage has a thin, sharp ridge as it transitions to the side plane and connects to the maxilla. The lateral cartilage is pointy and wedges between the 2 pieces that make up the ball of the nose. The ball. Interesting to know that the ball of the nose is actually made up of 2 pieces of cartilage, called the greater alar cartilage. Sometimes you will see the separation between these two pieces, and sometimes it will be too soft to see. These two pieces together make a rounded form that hooks in under itself at the septum, and you will typically see a bump where it connects to the skull inside the nostrils. The wings. Finally, on the sides of the ball, there are two wings made of fatty tissue. These wings also hook around and under. Viewed from the bottom, they connect to the face further back than the septum because of the roundness of the tooth cylinder. The fact that the septum and wings hook into the inside of the nose is important to avoid drawing a cartoony nose. These are two common mistakes. The first is just a two-dimensional outline of the nose. The second is focused only on the holes of the nostrils and lacks any volume of the wings and septum. By focusing on the volumes as they wrap underneath and into the nostrils will make your drawing look much more three-dimensional. The minor planes. You should memorize the subtle plane changes in all the different parts of the nose. These plane changes are usually seen as subtle shapes and edge variations, which to the untrained eye appear to be kind of random and unclear. Once familiar with the minor planes, you can easily identify them and make them more clear in your drawing. This gives your drawing a better sense of three-dimensional form, and this applies to anything, not just the nose. The minor planes are basically a simplified and geometric version of the anatomy. So let's take a look at the minor planes of the bridge. The top plane of the nasal bone faces upward and then slightly more downward at the lateral cartilage. From the side, you can see this slight angle change from the nasal bone to the cartilage. The connection between the bone and cartilage is usually the widest part of the bridge. The minor planes of the ball. The ball of the nose actually isn't a perfectly smooth ball, but has very distinct plane changes. It has a top, front, and bottom plane as the septum curls under itself and connects to the skull. The side plane acts as a step down to the nostril. It's also important to indicate the thickness of the septum. The minor planes of the wings. The wings curl into the nostrils similar to the septum, so they each have a wide top plane and a thin side plane. The wings are not paper thin, so an indication of the front planes is crucial to give them some thickness. The shape of the nose varies a lot from person to person. It can be soft, chiseled, wide and bulbous, thin and pointy, and so on. Next time you're in public, be a creeper and observe people's nose shapes. Next week, I'll show you step by step how to draw a three-dimensional nose.
So when you're feeling like you're not quite sure what to do and feel a little overwhelmed by it, you should try to break it down, simplify it a little bit for yourself. So if you break down your nose and kind of just get the shape of it first, so you have the bridge of your nose, and then it kind of comes out kind of like triangles where the nostrils come up. Here you can really see the ball of your nose. Then you can see the bridge of your nose, and it's showing the sides. This would be where you would shade in to help give it that depth. You can also look at step-by-step examples. You can look on here, or you can look on the Pinterest link that I have on my website. So you want to make sure that on the nose you have a highlight as well. And usually you have your highlight on the ball of the nose, because remember, your highlight helps make things look a little bit more round. So that'll give it that nice circular round shape. And you also have it a little bit lighter as it goes up the bridge. That's going to make this look like it's closer to you and the darker areas farther away. You have your midtones, so you want to see a little bit of a value that's a little bit more grayish, but not too dark. You have your cast shadows. It's where your values are going to be the darkest. Your reflected light, so you're going to have some spots that are going to have more highlighted areas on it to help show where your value, where it's kind of just like coming up and reflecting off of it. And then you have your core shadows again.
Hey guys, this is Stan Prokopenko. Welcome to another episode of Proko. I recommend you watch my previous video in which I cover the anatomy of the nose. Let's get right to it. So that you can follow along with me, I've included the reference photo I used for this drawing below the video. The lay-in. I'll start my lay-in with the perspective of the major planes. I want to define the perimeters of these planes first and make sure the width to height relationship is correct. Then I'll define the bottom plane, starting with a rhythm between the nostrils and bottom plane of the ball. Get a rhythm in there to separate the top plane from side planes and connect the nose to the forehead and eye socket by indicating the glabella and brow ridge. The anatomical nuances are subtle and the plane changes, especially around the bridge, are really soft, but I still want to lightly map in the connections between bones and cartilage pieces because it'll help me place the subtle halftones later. Staying light here is very important. Her nose points down, and so the septum will extend further down than the wings. The septum and wings curl in, and so the nostril shape is not just a simple oval, but more of a comma. On the other side, you don't see the inside of the septum, so the shape of the nostril will be defined by the wing and by the front plane. When the light is coming from the top, in this case it's top left, most of the bottom will be in shadow. Mapping in the shape of the shadow along the wings and ball is a key element. Notice this little square shape. That's this minor plane here, which defines the side of the front of the nose, giving it some thickness. Two values. I'll add the cast shadow from the nose and group this entire mass into one shadow value. Even though I see variations of value within the shadow, like this reflection under the nostril, those light values are still part of the shadow family. If you isolate these values, you'll see that the reflection in the shadow is much darker than the halftones in the light. To complete the two-value drawing, I'll add the shadow on the inside of the eye socket to define the edge of the nose and glabella. There's a dark halftone above the nostril that's awfully close to being a shadow. In that case, it's up to the artist to decide. You can push it to be part of the shadow or keep it part of the halftones. Personally, I don't want to accentuate this hook shape, and so I'll define the plane change later with the halftones, defining the full value with dark accents. In this drawing, there aren't too many dark accents, so this step will be fairly quick. The deep holes of the nostrils receive no direct light and very little reflected light, so they will be very dark. Then, as the septum and wings curl under, there will be some dark in those creases. After adding dark accents, the rest of the shadows appear too light, so I'll go through one more time and darken a little further. I want to do this before the halftone phase, to open up a larger value range for my halftones. Halftones and highlights. When drawing the halftones of the minor planes, I want to make sure that I don't lose the big picture, the values of the major planes. The light is coming from the top, so the bottom plane will be in shadow, the top plane will be the lightest, and the side planes in halftone. The halftone on the left will be a little bit lighter than the halftone on the right, since the light source is more on the left side of the picture. The ball of the nose will usually have darker halftones because of the redness of the blood under the skin. This makes the highlight more prominent on the ball, but it's important not to overdo it. You don't want the highlight to look like a snowflake on the nose. So pay attention to the edges of the highlight and give the edges some variety. Maybe a sharp at the bottom and soft at the top. There's many ways of designing it. The important thing is that you give it some thought. The top of the ball goes into halftone and the highlight disappears. At the connection of the ball to the bridge, another highlight begins and continues up to the glabella where it fades out really soft. And get some more halftones on the sides. Clean up edges and shapes. I'll go through the drawing one more time and do some cleanup work and define things a little bit better. This stage is about details. I look very closely at every part of the drawing.